Morning, Sam. How are you doing?
Morning, I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Frustrated,
Excellent.
but good. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Of course, so I'm Sam Billingham. I'm the face and founder of SODA, which is Survivors of Domestic Abuse, which is an online support group which are set up as a safe haven for those who've experienced coercive control and domestic abuse to come together without judgment. More recently, I've set up a business called Stronger Beginnings, which is about creating conversation and collaboration with people like yourselves to come together to put survivors of domestic abuse at the heart of what we do. And I think the biggest passion for me, like yourself, is raising awareness of coercive control, domestic abuse, and the impact that it's having on people at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I think, me personally, I think the only way forward is collaboration. Um, and it is coming, don't you think?
It's coming very, very slowly. I think we're going in the right direction. I think we're a lot more open about having these discussions and about talking about these situations. But I feel the people at the top, or the people that should be doing more than what we're doing, aren't really pulling their weight. I
Yeah,
feel that
100%
we're
agree.
kind of using our voices, we're using our lived experiences, but the people that have the power to create real change, they've kind of slipped back a little bit. So in that concept, we're kind of behind the times more. I feel as though we are moving forward, but it's like winning a losing battle. We're going 2 steps forward and then 3 steps back.
Yeah, I think personally, I don't see any improvement, to be honest with you, because we work on ground up front line, and I think it's actually getting worse. Just the fact that they are actually going the opposite direction and releasing now um, perpetrators. And I just think, what sort of signal is that giving out to perpetrators? It's an absolute disgrace. You
It
know,
is,
there's
it
there's no
really
deterrent
is.
anyway, is there? Do you know what I mean?
No, no.
So that's just like it's just beyond belief, innit?
It really is. My biggest passion at the moment is raising awareness around coercive control, because I think a lot of people are minimising and misunderstanding the concept of coercive control, and that is the foundation of domestic abuse. I feel as though we can't not talk about coercive control because that is domestic abuse. I had
Yeah.
a conversation yesterday with a professional, and they actually said to me, their words were, the police aren't acting because there's no bruises. So we're losing the fact that domestic abuse is about power and control. It's about coercive control, which is there right at the beginning and right at the end. And I think professionals and those who should know better are dismissing that fact completely, and it makes me question why we've actually got the Coercive Control Criminal Act in place, which came in force in 2015, when in 2024 nobody understands what coercive control is, no one wants to talk about it, perpetrators are being released. It's like everyone seems to have forgot what the concept of domestic abuse is, and as you've said, there's no real strong message, not even for survivors to come forward. What is the
No.
point?
No.
What is the point? Because
Exactly.
no one believes you, no one's going to listen to you, they're not going to punish, there's no support for you, so what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And that's exactly what's happening. It's hard enough for victims to speak out about what's happening to them, but then to face a system that doesn't believe them, victim blaming. Um, it is systemic abuse that they're faced with afterwards.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's appalling. It's absolutely appalling.
Absolutely, and I think we focus quite rightly on survivors of coercive control and domestic abuse, but we really need to be reaching and speaking to those at the top. It's, the professionals, police, all professionals that work alongside survivors of domestic abuse. They're the ones who have got the real, I hate this word, but the real power to create the change that we want to see. So it's like we're fighting for the change, but there's nobody there to make that change happen. We're kind of, as you say, you work on the front line, we're the voices for survivors, but that's it. There's nothing else happening. It's everything needs to be pulled together, which is why we have to have these conversations and collaborations. But it's as though we're forgetting all about coercive control, because in the words of lots of professionals, they didn't hit you, there's no visible marks, so what's the problem? I think it was recently released in the family court that was actually said to someone, but he didn't hit you. That was said to me almost 20 years ago, when the perpetrator I existed with broke his non-molestation order. But when you're existing in fear, real fear of that person, and they're on the other side of your front door, I was absolutely petrified.
Yeah.
I didn't see him, I could hear him, I didn't see him, but I froze with fear, because I'd existed with him and I knew what he was capable of.
Yeah.
Just because he was talking really nicely to me outside the front door, purely for people who might be passing by, or for the outside world to see, oh, what a lovely guy. But when you know what your perpetrator is capable of, it might not be a bruise or a slap, but their voice, them just looking at you, a stare, a look, a glance, is petrifying.
Yeah.
It is really, really
Yeah.
intimidating. And I don't think until society as a whole understands the concept and the impact of coercive control, we'll never move forward where coercive control and domestic abuse is concerned.
Yeah, I don't think that you can understand it unless you've experienced it, to be fair. I think it's something that's been made to be instilled inside you, that fear, that feeling at pit of your stomach where you're just living on absolute adrenaline constantly, aren't you? That even a noise, even a song, you can be in a supermarket and a certain song, a certain smell, a certain sound, and it's triggering you, and you're constantly like, I can remember once, because I had threats to kill on a daily basis from my perpetrator, and do you know what? He said that it would destroy me, as majority of them do. That is what their purpose and intention is, to ultimately destroy you one way or another, whether that be financially, physically, emotionally. And I can remember there was a really loud bang, and I actually thought that it were a gunshot. And I just had a massive panic attack, meltdown. I just lost it, and it were actually a car backfiring. But I genuinely thought, oh my God, this is it. I'm gonna die. And when you live like that on a daily basis, it makes you ill. And then you sort of labelled as being crazy. She's lost her marbles or whatever. They just do not understand how trauma works, do they?
No.
At all?
No, not at all. And I think two key things there, just picking up on what you've said, perpetrators actually tell you what they're going to do before they do it. And I've always said this, they destroy you and they tell you. So, for example, mine said he would drag me through the family court, he'd get my daughter taken off me, social services would get involved. And later down the line, that is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, society just doesn't understand the impact, and it's the same for me, that 20 years down the line I'm getting there, things get better, they do get better, but somebody simply putting a cup like that, a noise like that, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because you're always existing on those eggshells, because you don't know what's going to happen next. And sometimes that's why survivors stay or go back, because it's easy to see what's going to happen rather than leaving and keep looking over your shoulder wondering what's going to happen next. And as you say, society just doesn't understand the impact that it has on your life once you've escaped that situation. And again, that's something we really need to focus on, because that's the impact that coercive control has on your life. It's just not, even though there's no physical marks, it's all in here and in here. And I think it's one of those, well, you can't see it, so it doesn't happen. There's no visible marks, so, you know, you're okay. You're smiling, you're putting a sentence together, you're fine. It's kind of minimised and just swept under the carpet. And as you say, she's mad, she hates men. It's not, where's all that come from? What's happened? What's led up to that point?
Yeah.
And I think it's, as you said at the beginning, it's so frustrating. And these conversations have to be had for others as in those in the ranks, the professionals, to understand that these changes have to be made. Otherwise, we're not doing anything for survivors of domestic abuse. We're not helping them at all, because there's nothing for them. There's no justice, there's no support services, funding's being cut.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I can't believe that we're in 2024 and, you know, it's unbelievable that you've got women and children queuing up for food and just the bare essentials. It's for me, like I said, I feel as though it's going backwards. I feel as though they're not listening. They know exactly what needs to change. They know they could put simple procedures in place to make real change.
Absolutely.
And I can't understand why they're not doing it, because for me, the reason I wanted to do these podcasts was so that we can get it out there on social media, the reality. You know, I've done lots of media and TV, and I know you have as well, Sam, and it is edited. You don't get to really say everything that you want to say. You do, but it gets cut out. But well, quite a lot of mine gets cut out, to be fair, and some bleeping as well along with that.
I haven't managed that yet, but it is so frustrating. And when you're passionate about something as well, it's really hard to keep your feelings in, because we're the voice for survivors of domestic abuse. Without people like yourself, there'd be no awareness, there'd be no understanding of what coercive control and domestic abuse is really like. And as you've said, I think people think you have to do massive things to help and prevent it from happening, but you really don't. You can start off with the simple things, and it's as though just nobody wants to listen, and it's frustrating as to why. You know, this is happening constantly. As we're sitting here now, there's somebody out there who's experiencing coercive control and domestic abuse, but nothing ever gets done. And it's like, why?
Do you know what I find sometimes is when women come to us, sometimes they just want that validation because they're not actually 100% sure whether it is or not. And it's when we say absolutely 100%, this is not right, this is abuse. It's almost as though they've had a massive weight lifted off their shoulders because somebody's actually told them that they're not going crazy. You know, this isn't their fault and it's not their shame to carry. And that is one of my massive bugbears with all of this, because, you know, why are victims being made to feel like it's their fault by this system when they've already been made to feel as though it's their fault? Everything's their fault while they're living it, and then everything's their fault facing a system that should be ultimately protecting them. And you know, we say simple procedures. It would be a start if police actually started acting on, you know, non-molestation orders and DVPOs, domestic violence protection orders. You know, they've got posters up in police stations, you know, encouraging victims to come forward. For what? Because the police aren't believing them. It's practically impossible to prove coercive control.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember during lockdown I launched a campaign called MTAB, which stands for More Than a Bruise, which is about shining a light on coercive control. And I ran it through October, Domestic Abuse Awareness Month. And it was simply a picture and a quote of what coercive control could look like. And the amount of people who contacted me to say, I didn't realise I was in an abusive situation because there's no physical violence, was just overwhelming. I'm actually relaunching that campaign again this year in October because as you've said, people don't know that they're in an abusive situation because there's no physical violence. So if we can raise the awareness of that, that is brilliant. But then we need, as you've said, we need the police to be there when somebody records and reports it. We need something solid to happen after that point, because otherwise, what's the point of them reporting it?
Yeah.
I think, and it is so frustrating that the orders are useless, they're absolutely worthless, waste of time, waste a piece of paper, they don't do anything. I feel the same about the Coercive Control Crime Act 2015. It's absolutely pointless. I don't know why it's there. I don't know how it got through Parliament, because it's great raising awareness, but there's no punishment, there's no deterrent.
No.
Survivors have got to jump through hoops to prove it. So there's no, what's the point? Just what's the point?
Yeah, even
and it is so frustrating.
Yeah, even down to text messages or emails or, well, anybody could have sent that. That could have been somebody that's, and you're thinking, oh my God, why aren't you listening? The evidence is there.
Yeah.
The domestic abuse bill, nobody's adhering to it. I don't see, why is it even there?
Exactly. It's as though they're going through the motions. We know about coercive control and domestic abuse. We'll just throw this and put this little sticking plaster over a massive issue, and then it's just pointless. And it's actually stopping survivors of domestic abuse from speaking out and reporting it. Then they're blamed for not reporting it, and then nothing's happened. So they might go back, and then they're blamed for that. But it's because they're not being protected. They're not even being given specialist support because funding's being cut. The waiting lists are too horrific. It's just a mess. It's an absolute mess that really needs undoing and redoing.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah. Because I've always said, this ain't a broken system because it's never been right in first place, has it?
No,
Let's face it.
Never.
And these little laws that they keep fetching in and we're supposed to be massively grateful for are a waste of time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There is no real change. And I just want to go back to, with coercive control and things, the majority of women, I want to say 99.9% of them would hands down say that the coercive control side of it and the mental torture is worse, 100% worse than, any broken rib, any black eye. I've had both, and I can hands down say that the coercive control side of it is the one that, isn't spoke about enough. And I always want to talk about the women that have actually committed suicide, because we're never going to really know, because the statistics aren't a true reflection in any way. So I always think that our statistics are a lot better because when they speak to us, victims speak to us, they're not scared to tell because they know that we're not going to go running to social services or without that, they feel safe to speak out with us. Whereas the statistics that are given to the government are from LA. Now, LA will only have on record, which we both know is box ticking exercises.
Absolutely.
That goes back to the government that says, this many da-da-da-da-da. I don't think any of it is a true reflection whatsoever.
No, nor me. As we've said, a lot of people don't even know that they're in that situation because of the coercive control, and then it takes a lot of courage to record and report it. So, we'll never know the true figure, but as what you've just said, I would rather have a beating I was with him for 3 years, and I would have quite happily, not the right word, but I would have had a beating every day rather than coercive control, because it's taken me almost 20 years to rebuild Sam, to know who Sam is again. Yeah. It's taken all that time, and I was a person who tried to commit suicide. I took an overdose because nobody could see what was happening. I lost so much weight, I couldn't string a sentence together, I couldn't maintain eye contact with anybody, my appearance changed dramatically, and I just automatically assumed people, as in professionals, would somehow notice and just ask the question, are you okay? is everything all right? And nobody ever did. When I made my first disclosure, I was actually sacked. It was to my boss, and I was sacked instantly. So after that point, I never opened up again. I thought, what's the point? And the only way out for me at that time was an overdose, which very luckily didn't work. But there are many women who have committed suicide because they probably felt the same. You know, they're not believed, they're not heard, there's no support. And unfortunately, professionals are just reconfirming everything a perpetrator tells you. So for me, when he told me I'm going to get social services involved, which happened, when she arrived at my house, she looked at me as though I was a piece of poo that she just stepped in. She automatically judged me straight away because there were no visible injuries. So what he said to me was right in my mind, and I just assumed that, you know, they've come, they're going to take my daughter away. And to exist like that when you've been through everything, it's heartbreaking because you're at rock bottom, you're broken, and then you've got a professional who you think is going to support you or at least believe you, but they seem to be taking the side of the perpetrator, and it's horrendous. It's a horrific situation to be in for anyone.
I actually believed, it made me believe that my children would be better off without me. I was a crap mum, you know, I was absolutely useless at everything, I were ugly, I were fat, you know, and you genuinely do start believing it, and you don't recognise yourself anymore, you don't know who you are, and that takes some bloody hard work to rebuild that, to get, you know, you've got to strip that sort of back, haven't you, and unpick. And I think, for me anyway, I had to get to that point to be able to get back up, you know, and it did nearly come to where I weren't here anymore, but I do believe that we're here because our voices should be heard, because, do you know what, I didn't really have a clue what I were doing when I set Resolute up. I were an hairdresser for 30 years, and I had my own hair salons, and, you know, the very thing that he was attracted to at the beginning, ultimately, he destroyed. So my salon went, I ended up alcohol dependent as a coping mechanism, which was fed and withheld to me, you know, and it very, very, very nearly died. I ended up in hospital, and a consultant said to me, you know, we don't know if you're gonna make this. And I thought, oh my God, my kids, what the hell, what's happening to me? And I was severely jaundiced because of the alcohol. I've got cirrhosis at liver now, and you know, it was that point, and it was sort of, I had to rebuild myself physically and mentally right from scratch. I think it takes a lot of talking about it with right people. Exercise played a massive part in it, so walking, fresh air, processing, reprocessing, meditation, that were really good for me. And ultimately, I think it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life is pick myself back up and rebuild myself again. You know, I'm never going to be able to go back to the job that I loved, that I started when I was 15 years old, right up until that point. I'm never going to be well enough to do that, because on top of that, with the trauma to my body, rheumatoid arthritis presented itself. So because of my illnesses, I'm restricted to what I can and can't do heavily. So, you know, this is a perfect job for me, because I can sit and I can be gobby. Because that's me.
I'm sitting here like a nodding dog. There's a lot of similarities between you and I with things that you've just shared there, especially about you're ugly, you're fat, you're useless, you're crap, you're worthless. And it does take a lot of courage to reprogram yourself.
Yeah.
And I just want to say to anyone listening, there is life after domestic abuse.
There is,
without a shadow of a
absolutely.
doubt.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how long it takes you to get to where you want to be, as long as you start taking those steps. And for me, I have just found Sam. I'm middle-aged. I've just come back off my very first holiday abroad, and it was amazing. Best thing I've ever done. I had an amazing time with my 18-year-old daughter. We met these lads and they thought I was 28 years old, so it gave me that confidence boost.
Bonus!
And it was like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But it takes a long
Yeah.
time to get there. And that's part of the journey, that's
Yeah.
part of the process.
Yeah.
But there is definitely life after domestic abuse, and I think it feels very much like it's an exciting new chapter for me because, like you've said, I'll never be Sam when I was 18, when I was legal secretary. I'll never be that person, but I'm really looking forward to life as a middle-aged single woman. What's out there, what's going to happen. But you still have those bad days sometimes you still have those triggers, but you learn how to deal and cope with them.
Yes.
And as you've said, that is the hardest part of the impact of coercive control and domestic abuse, and I don't think society quite understands how hard that process is, which is why when a survivor makes that disclosure, which is why they need support like what Resolute offer, because you need that guidance. I had nothing at all, which is why I set up SODA, because there was just nobody wanted to hear, nobody wanted to listen, there was just nothing. And I think with organisations like yours, it's good and it's better for survivors. We've still got a long way to go, but with the steps we're making as well, we can definitely create that change with conversation and collaboration.
Yeah, and I think for me, you know, I am very passionate about it, and I do ruffle a lot of feathers within certain local authorities and police and things like that, because I do speak my mind, and if I don't agree with what they're doing to victims and how they're being treated, then I will hold them accountable. And it's as simple as that, you know.
Absolutely. And I think I'm exactly the same, and I think it's because of our lived experience, because it gives you that fire within, and you've got that passion, you've got that dedication, but it's also about putting something right that's wrong. It's that injustice that we're seeing survivors going through, and that's our passion. So we've got the confidence and the gobbiness to do that, because once you've survived coercive control, in my opinion, you can survive anything, because I often have this conversation with my dad, and I'm very outspoken. I'm not rude, I'm not disrespectful, I'm very outspoken, and I like to get my point across because I don't like injustice. I don't like things that aren't right, and if I can say something or do something to help put things right, then I will say that, whether it's police or whoever. But I do believe that our lived experience helps us with that passion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, because it was same when I was recovering from alcoholism. You know, the caseworker that I had when I came out of hospital, he had lived experience, and I'd tried a couple of times to withdraw and things like that, but I weren't successful, and I felt very much it was because they didn't get it. Do you know what I mean? It's like somebody that's never had a baby telling you that it's not going to hurt, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And
yes,
the thing is,
100%.
It is going to hurt, you know, it is.
Of course.
But I always think that half of the problem is you can deal with things if you know what you're dealing with.
Exactly.
Can't you? It's the unknown. It's the unknown that petrifies you.
Absolutely.
And my caseworker, he just got me to a T. He absolutely got me, and I told him everything, you know. And if it weren't for him, you know, I don't think I'd be here, to be fair. He were amazing. But again, it was that lived experience. He totally understood how and why I became alcohol dependent. And I mean, we're both on Twitter, aren't we? And that's
Yeah,
how we've connected.
it
And I
is.
think we've had a lot of fathers' rights groups and some very misogynistic males trolling and attacking Resolute because ultimately, we are a women's service and we don't, you know, we're not saying that this doesn't happen to men. It absolutely does. But obviously, we are lived experience and we are female.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely, absolutely.
and I think the trolling and all of that, I haven't got the headspace or time for any sort of pathetic. It's bullying tactics basically, and I just want to say that they're wasting the time because there isn't anything any of them can ever say to me that will come anywhere close to making me felt like I felt eight
Yeah,
years ago.
absolutely.
So they can crack on if they want. If that what keeps them entertained, then that's up to them. But they will get no retaliation nor any rise from me. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. I've had, over the years, I've had, oh, you're a man hater, you hate men. No, I don't. I don't.
No.
I love men, and I actually said that. I was invited to the Paul Lavelle Foundation. They have a peer support group, and I was invited to speak and share my lived experience at one of their virtual meetings, and it was amazing because once you actually get speaking, our lived experience is the same. The cycle is exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's very much not about men hating women, women hating women. It's about learning that the cycle is exactly the same, whoever you are. And I know the Paul Lavelle Foundation and Mankind do a lot of work around that. But over the years, there has been so much hatred towards me, like yourself. Instead of seeing what we're trying to achieve awareness, we're trying to do X, Y, and Z. It gets very personal sometimes, and sometimes it is hard to switch off from that. But I think you get to the point where you just ignore it. You have to be able to do what you're doing.
I just think because of what we've been through, we've built up a very resilient tolerance to things.
Yeah.
And probably 15 years ago, I'd have been absolutely mortified that anybody could think such bad things of me.
Yeah.
But I think through my journey, I kind of got to the point where I thought, do you know what? I don't really care what anybody thinks about me anymore or says about me. I know who I am. I know what happened. I know the truth. And I can live with that. And I think at some
Absolutely.
point you have to find some kind of peace with it.
Definitely.
Because ultimately it will just eat away at your soul.
Definitely. There was one guy who I had to block in the end because he took it a bit too far. I mean, everyone's got a point to raise and things like that, but when it gets really personal and, you just said you have to find that peace, which you do. So there was one person I had to block, and it's one of those where I see the name at various events and it makes you go, it's one of those sort of thing. But
Yeah.
the majority now, I think for me, they're seeing what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to achieve, and they're quite open. And I've had quite a few male survivors reach out to me in the last few weeks, and that they find it really difficult to kind of comprehend that the cycle is the same. It's irrelevant if we're male or female or anything like that. I think somehow they see it as a battle, as a competition between
Yeah,
male and female,
yeah.
which takes a focus off everything really.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because we're all trying to achieve the same thing really.
Yeah.
We're all raising awareness, we're all sharing our lived experience because we know what that feels like. But some take it to the extreme where they see it as a competition, which is really sad. Which is why I don't spend a lot of time on Twitter. I used to love Twitter, but I step away quite a lot now for that reason, and
Yeah.
it's so sad. It's really sad.
Yeah, I think sort of dividing us isn't
Absolutely.
a way forward,
it's not,
is it?
No, definitely not. And as we said at the beginning, it's about having these conversations and collaborating. We could do so much more together
Yeah.
for other people in that situation, but for some it feels very much like a competition.
Yeah, it's the very thing that we tried to escape, which is money, power, and control, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I'm not
Absolutely.
down for any of that. I would rather walk away I try not to, as much as possible, have negative energies in my life anymore, because I ain't got time or headspace or
Exactly.
energy for it, to be honest.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't know why or how. I literally went to a community centre at the top of my road and said, I need a room. I need to rent a room. I need to be able to, if I can support one woman and help one woman or not go through this alone, then I feel like I've gave something back. And
Absolutely.
it just went from there, and it's just
That's
grown
brilliant.
and grown and grown. And there is a massive need, massive. But unfortunately, we haven't got the resources or the funding.
No, it's very similar with Soda. So Soda I set up back in 2009, and it's just an online support group. We don't offer crisis support. It's for those who've left the situation. It's open to men and women all across the country, because again, it's just an online support group. And it's needed, even as you said earlier, it's about that validation. It's about people understanding it wasn't their fault, they're not on their own. And I think the key thing for the group I run is the word isolation. So for anybody who's been in a coercive control and domestic abuse situation, you're isolated in that situation. So for us, we don't want survivors to be isolated. We want them to know that they're not on their own and they're not the only ones going through this. But again, I've never had any funding for the work that I do and things like that. But when you're passionate and you've got a genuine passion about helping others, even if it is one person, that doesn't always come to the top of your list. You do what you've got to do because we know what it's like to be in that situation with no one. So we sort of work with what we've got. We do what we can with what we've got. And I think the smaller charities and things like that have the bigger impact than the larger charities sometimes.
Yeah, because do you know why, Sam? Because I think that we do what we're actually supposed to do, and we're not controlled by salaries, and there's a lot of bullying tactics goes on as well in these bigger organisations, and I've had a lot of them trying to intimidate. And work against. I've even had them trying to shut us down. And like I said earlier on, you know, I've had to grow some very thick skin, and my resilience is out there massively, you know, and I won't have that sort of. It's like playground stuff, innit?
I'm nodding again because I can totally relate. So it's just me, myself and I've done all this work on my own for almost 20 years. I've had organisations in the area where I live want me to stop doing what I'm doing and kind of work with them, and I'm like, no, not happening, never in a million years. I was actually called into my local police station about 2 years ago, and I was told I've got to stop what I'm doing because I'm going to cause domestic abuse homicide deaths because of the things that I might say to the survivors who come to me. And I'm thinking, but I know what to say because I've lived it, and I've got that lived experience. Yeah, I was actually called into the police station and told to stop what I'm doing, and I'm like,
oh
not
my
happening.
God, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to cause domestic abuse homicide deaths if I carry on because I'm not qualified to do what
so
I'm doing.
it's not them that's going to cause the homicide deaths, is it? By not actually acting on protective orders that out with paper they're written on. Then really, it makes. Do you know what I think? I think that this government does not want change because I think it's working to a T, exactly how they want it to work.
It's how they, absolutely.
I think that this system is working exactly how it's meant to, and they do not want change. And I think that we collaborating. If there's too many, they can't ignore.
Exactly.
And they're wanting to gag us. They use lived experience, but they don't want to pay lived experience. They want to pay the bigger organisations that will use you. They will use you as lived experience. It's the same old thing, isn't it? The rich get richer, the poor get poorer.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it's that. It's
and it's so sad. It really is, because together we could create so much change, so much positive change, and quickly, because everything takes time with going through government and all that kind of stuff. And then, as we said earlier, it's just like a small sticking plaster, just to kind of probably to shut us up. You know,
Yeah.
we've put this in place, that'll be quiet, but nothing's
Do you know
working.
why? Do you know why I think it is, Sam? I think it's because the entire thing around domestic abuse is so complex for them. I don't think they're intelligent enough to actually tackle it. Maybe it's that. Maybe
It
it's
could be.
too
It really
it's
could
too
be.
much of a challenge for them that they can't be bothered.
It could be. It really could be. It could be. But
Because it
their
is complex, isn't
It
it?
really is. It really is. That's why you need lived experience, because we've been there, and
Yeah.
as you said earlier, you can't understand coercive control unless you've lived through it, because it
No.
it really is difficult even to explain. I've sat here and shared my story, and sometimes I've laughed because as I'm saying it now, it does sound mad. You know,
Yeah.
I was timed by a grown adult when I went to the toilet, and when you say that, it's like, really? But that's really what happened, and you don't understand that unless you've experienced it.
Yeah.
And that's where we come in. So
Yeah.
so theoretically, to create change, they do need people with lived experience to help them create that change.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
So
I did
So I think, why don't they employ lived experience? And
Exactly.
I don't mean just like Sir us. I've never been paid one penny. It cost me money to set Resolute up. I don't earn a salary. I do this purely because I know, hands down, that we've supported women that would not be here without Resolute. I know that. They would openly tell you that. And that is the reason, because I've been in that place where I've not wanted to be here anymore, and I didn't know where to go, who to tell, or where to turn to. And the last thing in the world you want is to go to a police station or have a social worker stood in your house. Let's just remind everybody that it's your house that they think they can come into and speak to you like shit, which is what they do, majority of them. And I'm not saying they're all the same, because there's some good ones, but majority of them speak to victims like they are shit. And, you know, it's give these women the tools, the empowerment, and encourage them to change things better, for the better for themselves and the children. You know, what are they faced with? They are set up to fail. That is what this current system does. It sets them up to fail. And
absolutely.
it's going to take strong women like us and others to keep ploughing this out there and get our voices heard properly, because you can run all the petitions and everything else as much as you want, all the complaints, all the appeals. They will not listen.
No, they won't. I'm just talking about social workers. I'm working on a project at the moment where I did a keynote speech back in November, and it came to light that one of the questions I was asked was, do you feel if the social worker that came to your home was domestic abuse awareness trained, it would have made a difference? And I just remember looking at this woman and I thought, I've heard exactly what she said, but I can't quite believe that she's asking me this, because I just assumed all social workers were trained, and they're not. So I'm working on a documentary at the moment where we're doing a lot of research around this and around social workers, and they're absolutely not trained, and they're definitely not trained in coercive control. We've got it in black and white, we've got loads of research coming in, and my concern is police, probation, NHS, DWP, all them haven't got the relevant training either that they need to support survivors of domestic abuse. So with doing the things that we're doing, we can create change, but as you said, it needs more of us to keep banging the drum continually until those changes are made.
Problem is, though, I think it's okay training them, but once they've done their safeguarding referral, or then on to other organisations or whatever, what actually is there for them after that? Because there's no housing. You know, we work as a coordinated community response, so we'll sort of signpost, so we'll make sure that all the benefits are in place for them. We can get food banks for them if need be. We can do supporting letters and things like that, and then they'll have like a support group that they can attend. But what happens when they've spoke out? Because there's a massive gap there where they're having the Marac meetings, yeah? What happens in them days? What the hell do they think happens in them days while they're waiting for police, social care and everybody else to sit down and have a Marac meeting? Where do they think these women go?
I know, it's ludicrous, and it's the government that we need to make those changes and fill those gaps, and it's only those people that can do it, and it's frustrating because I don't listen to people like you and I, because what do we know?
No.
You know, what do we know? We don't know anything. They're professionals. But are they?
No. They ain't got a clue.
Some might be, but the majority haven't got a clue.
They ain't got a clue. And how could they have a clue? Because at the end of the day, I don't think that they're bothered either, to be honest.
No. I'm smiling, not because it's funny, but because I know exactly where you're coming from. Over the years, the people who have contacted me after having support from professionals and the things they've told me, and then there's just me and my little group, and I'm like, can we join my group where there's lots of other people who understand and things like that? But you're right, I genuinely think that they don't care at all. No. As you said, it's too complex, because I think if I didn't have that lived experience, it would definitely be too complex for me to understand coercive control.
I don't think you can believe it. I don't think you can believe it. And even if you were to tell people what you treat like by police and social care and family courts, I think the general public think that you are protected and you are helped and you are supported, when it's the complete polar opposite.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I think that if it did get out there properly and this was all uncovered, there would be like a massive uprise, because
definitely
it's unbelievable. You can't believe it unless you've experienced it. The way that some of these professionals speak to victims is disgraceful. You know, you've got these judges in family courts, and some of the comments that I've heard, both in a professional capacity and personally, it's disgusting.
I can imagine. I had a phone call quite a few years ago. It was a social worker again, actually, and she'd said something very, very bluntly, like, if you go back to him, you'll get your child took off you and it'll be your fault. That victim blaming.
Yeah.
And I remember her phoning me. She phoned me up, and she was quite arrogant. And she went, "Well, who are you anyway? You just listen to survivors. Is that all?" And I laughed, because just listening to a survivor is a lot more than what you're doing, because you're victim blaming because you haven't got a clue. You know, her perpetrator has probably said exactly those words, and you've just reconfirmed everything that her perpetrator has told her. So you've done far more damage than I ever could, because I know what it feels like to be in the situation that she's in.
Yeah.
I think it's very much, they take the easy way out. They think they're doing the bare minimum to support that survivor. They don't want to go any deeper as such, because it is a complex situation, but they have to know about that to be able to do their job, to be able to support that survivor and protect that family, whereas we're not seeing that at the moment at all.
I can remember first social worker, because I think I had about 5, as most do, because they can't keep the social workers, can they? You know.
No.
One case you might have. I worked with one woman, and I think she had something like 7 social workers in the space of 12 months. How is it possible that they can pick these complex cases up? One leaves, somebody picks that case up, and then they're making the most stupidest mistakes, you know, where they're getting children's date of birth wrong, they're getting children's names wrong, they're getting addresses wrong, And it is happening. Believe me, it is happening.
Oh
It's
my God.
silly mistakes like that, along with serious mistakes.
I was going to say.
I had a case, right, where this case mirrored very much similar to what happened to me. And in 2018, that is when we fled. Bear in mind that, you know, it was my house originally, and I'd lived in this house with my eldest son for 7 years, and then got married, and obviously it's, as time goes on, and then the abuse got worse and worse and worse, and the alcoholism started coming into play. Social care had an absolute field day with me, as you can imagine, can't you? Now, if common sense actually came into play with it all, right, they would step outside at box and think, right, we've got a woman here that has never had social care involvement, ever. She's got her own business. She's got no trace of any police reports at all, right? All of a sudden, she's met this man, and then years later, this pattern started sort of forming, you know. All of a sudden, she's got social care involvement, she's making reports of abuse, and it's common sense stuff. Do you know what I mean?
And that's why we need to keep talking about coercive control, because everything you've just said, I actually said to my dad this morning, funnily enough, everything that you've just said. You know, I was a legal secretary, I was always dressed really smart, and that changed very quickly. My appearance changed very quickly. I used to be really bubbly, lots of conversations, that stopped. So the physical signs are there really from the beginning if people look and take the time to notice those things. And that's why we have to keep talking about coercive control and controlling behaviour, because it's there in plain sight if people have the common sense to look and to kind of read between the lines a little bit more, rather than waiting for the physical abuse to come into play and looking at the physical signs, because it's far too late then. Because for me, the coercive control started right at the beginning when I very first met him. Because like we do, I opened up to him, told him where I live, my job, as you do with people you meet all the time. But those were the first three things that he took away from me: my family, my friends, and my job. Because I was like, oh, I'm Sam, I still live at home, I'm really close to my mum, I go out every weekend, I've got a great job. And those are the first three things that he took away from me. But you never stop to think, oh, I better not say this to this person because this might happen. I do now. I do now because of my lived experience.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to keep talking about coercive control and sharing our lived experience about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you experience the family courts then as well, Sam?
I did. Yes. The good old family courts.
It's a joy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is the most barbaric place ever, isn't it? It is horrific.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that was the worst part. The worst part was losing my job, and then the worst part was the family court. I remember my solicitor, female solicitor, lovely woman, really nice. We got on really, really well. And I was the one who always said no contact from the beginning, because Tegan, my daughter, was only very, very young. She was only 10 months old at the time. He was very, very controlling, very violent, alcoholic. And there was no way I was having contact, just no. And I remember her going, but judges like all dads to see their children. And I was like, yeah, I totally agree. I said, if it's in the benefit of the child, I said, and in this case, it's not. And she said it again. I went, and then she looked at me and she went, you're not going to change your mind, are you? And I went, no. And she went, okay. And she started filling a form out, and then she looked at me and she went, I understand, I'm a survivor of domestic abuse myself. And then she proceeded to tell me about her lived experience.
And I bet you felt relief, didn't you, Sam?
I did, because obviously at the beginning she was doing a job. Once she made that disclosure to me, I understood she's doing a job, and then she told me about her experience. But for me, the one thing I really noticed was the perpetrator was exactly the same in court as he was with me. So I was in a suit. I just sat like that. I was absolutely petrified that they were going to take my daughter. I was just, oh my God. He was sitting like this. He got his shorts on, t-shirt on, and all this. The cocky attitude, and I'm thinking, oh my God. In the end, mine was actually thrown out of court because he didn't turn up to court. In the end, he phoned up with so many excuses. But it was the most scariest thing ever. The building, the people, the judges, everybody just frightened the living daylights out of me because his coercive control and controlling behaviour had already told me he's going to get my daughter taken off me. So that's at the forefront of my mind in this situation. It was the most horrific thing I'd ever been through. And the one thing that sticks in my mind was, I think it was somebody from the family centre. They were talking about he's going to have overnight contact and then it's going to be weekend contact and all this. And I'm sitting there going, no, it's not happening. Yeah. And they called me in and they said, we've decided it's not going to go ahead because we're worried about the safety of our staff. Not we're worried about the safety of your 10-month-old daughter, but we're worried about the safety of our staff because he was so violent. So it made me question when I had that visit from the social services and I was told, if you have him back, you'll get your daughter taken off you. But then I'm controlled to say yes to contact. Everything's conflicting. Nothing links up, and nothing makes sense.
Nothing in the system's joined up.
No. So if I have him back, she's going to be taken off me. But you want me to say yes to contact because that's okay. Why is that okay? It's the most ludicrous thing ever. And again, people don't understand that is coercive control. The perpetrator just wants to control me because that's exactly what he told me. I will take you to court so you're told what to do. Not, I'm going to take you to court so I can see my daughter. It was all about power and control.
Yeah.
He instructed 3 different solicitors over I think it was a 3-year period, and nobody picked up on anything because he's obviously gone in and gone, my ex is a right bitch, she's not letting me see my daughter. Instead of somebody thinking, hold on a minute, why is she a bitch? Why is she not letting this person see that child? They just go on face value what the perpetrator says and then destroys the survivor by ripping you apart and making you do things that you don't want to do because you're just trying to keep yourself and your daughter or your child safe. It's ludicrous. It really is. And that's why we have to keep talking about coercive control, because the majority of domestic abuse is coercive control and nobody seems to be seeing that at all.
For me, my opinion, I think that the violence against women and girls, rape, it all should fall under a domestic abuse umbrella anyway, because the majority of it is, isn't it? You know, I think that violence against women and girls, I would say probably 90% of it is somebody that they know.
Yeah.
Rape, 90% of the time, it's somebody that they know. And I think that they've set all these sort of Vogue organisations up to take the eye off the ball of domestic abuse. And it's like I said earlier, I think that they don't know how to challenge it or tackle it because it's too complex for them.
Yeah,
I really do.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
And
I agree.
I think it is just swaying it off where it's like, oh, we've got a group here that's going to be for violence against women and girls, you know, and then we've got other organisations. It all ultimately needs to come as one and all be joined up.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Nothing is joined up, and that's where we're going. That's where everything's going wrong. Nothing joined up. We've got good things happening here and good things happening here, but what about in the middle? We need good things to happen everywhere.
But it's same with courts as well. So if there's a criminal investigation going on, you can't bring that up in family court because it's a separate issue.
Yeah.
So,
but it's not though, is it? It's all. Everything is linked
it's
up.
all. It's all one
exactly.
case. But they'll not take that into consideration. In family court,
It's
But
crazy.
it is crazy, because how can you prove anything when they won't
Exactly.
even listen to what's happening criminally in family court? So you're like,
Exactly.
what the hell?
Yeah. Yeah.
Surely this and this should be here. It should
Exactly.
they should be opened up, and I think that victims should have the option of remote hearings. I can't understand why the life of me they will not let victims just have remote hearings, because it is the most traumatic experience you have to go through.
Yeah.
Just, they seem to forget that these women, majority of them, have never stepped foot inside a police station, a court,
Yeah.
or a solicitor's. They are absolutely petrified. They have lived through all this trauma of abuse for years, or even such short periods of time. It don't really matter. It's still the same impact.
Yeah.
And then they're faced with, oh my God, I've got to go to court. And you know what? It doesn't matter how many times I go to court, even just supporting, I still get that sick feeling in the pit of my stomach just entering that building.
Yeah. You just talking about it, I'm living it out, what my experience, and it was petrifying, because with family court, you are literally around a square table, you are literally sitting in front of the perpetrator.
Yeah.
And that is the most intimidating thing that I'd ever been through. So I was here, my solicitor, then him, and then his solicitor, and then like the judge, and it's like you're all just round a coffee table, and it's like what he put me through, and now you put me at a table in front of him. It's so triggering.
Yeah.
All those feelings, fear. I was absolutely petrified. I freeze. So when I'm really scared, I'll go into freeze mode. But my leg will constantly just shake. My solicitor had to sort of calm me down, because it is so intimidating, because you're literally sitting right in front of the person who has controlled and abused you.
Yeah.
And it's like, hello, why is no one thinking about my trauma, what I've been through, what I'm going through right now?
Yeah.
And everyone's pressuring me into making me let this man see my daughter, who I'm petrified of, and you want me to hand... No. There's so much pressure and not enough understanding.
Do you know what
all.
I said, Sam? I said there is nobody in this country or this land will make me send my son somewhere he's not going to be safe. And do you know the reason why? Is because I'd heard about Claire Throssell's story. I don't know if you watched Claire's podcast.
Yeah.
So you know what happened with her case. And, I said to him, it ain't happening. Because ultimately, I'd be the one that would have to live for that.
Exactly.
Not the judge. Not the judge that's made that decision
Absolutely.
to put
Absolutely.
my child in danger. It would be me that would have to live the rest of my life like Claire, because of what they've decided.
Yeah.
And they've not even looked at... And her ex-husband had locked a bloody Kafkas officer in the office and said that she wasn't to be left on her own because she didn't feel safe, but yet the judge awarded contact for unsupervised contact for 5 hours a week.
It's ludicrous.
Unbelievable.
It really is.
Unbelievable.
And
They
it's
need
really
opening up. They
scary.
need opening up. They need regulating, and they need to give victims the option of remote hearings. And I asked a solicitor why can't it be remote hearing? There's no reason. It's because apparently the judge likes to see the facial expressions. What? Is that what? Facial expressions? The fear of God on your face? Is that what they like to see?
God.
Yeah. It's not right. It were okay during pandemic. Why is it not okay now?
Oh my God. That's just made me go really, really queer, because the perpetrator I existed with, they don't show any remorse or any...
No.
They don't show any... I would. No. Survivors would. That fear, that, oh shit, oh my God. But a perpetrator doesn't. A perpetrator can just sit there. You can't read a perpetrator. That's the whole point of coercive control. They don't show any emotion, anything at all. That's why they get away with what they get away with. So how they can read, that's just crazy. That is just absolute madness.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Absolute madness.
The thing is as well, I have, you need to focus on one one thing? Is it family court? Is it your bugbears with police? Is it social care? I said, do you know what? I can't pinpoint one of them because it's all as bad. They're all as bad. Family court is basically the nail in the coffin, innit? But time you've lived that journey through that system, I can remember first social worker saying to me, you need to get it inside your head, lady. You are not a victim anymore. You're a survivor. I'm not joking, right, Sam? I was an absolute wreck. At what point can they call you a survivor? At what point can they say that? Because they're still victimising you. And they're still abusing you, and they're allowing the abuse to continue.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like... again, she came into my home and spoke to me like crap. And then you go to court and you spoke to like crap. You know.
Because it's our fault. Why did we stay? What did we do wrong? What did we do for them to do that to us? It's all our fault. It's not it's not the perpetrator's fault, it's all us.
Yeah, exactly. It's all back to front, it's all backwards, and none of it's joined up. There's no accountability. Absolutely. And there's no communication between any of services. So You've got police that don't discuss really with social care. They might sit in MARAT meetings, but they can't understand a case because how can you? When you've got, you're lucky if you get a collar number from a police officer.
Yeah.
Who did you speak to? I don't know. Did you not get a collar number? No, he didn't give me one. Well, we've got no trace of it then. And it's like, and they don't understand that you've all on to remember your own bloody name. Never mind what officer's collar number were.
Exactly.
That's not your job.
Exactly. And making that phone call is about... I remember making the phone call to the police for the first time and I was absolutely petrified. I was so nervous, I was shaking because the perpetrator was upstairs and I was whispering and all that. And they don't understand that process of the courage it takes to pick up that phone and make that call. So again, it's your fault for not taking the collar number. It's your fault. Why didn't you? But if they understood coercive control and its impact, they would know. Like you've just said, don't even know what day of the week it is. I don't even know my own name. How am I supposed to think to ask for that?
And then it's just a minute. I'll put you through to somebody else, and then you've got to repeat it all over again.
Yeah.
And then do you think that you've resolved that? Then you don't hear anything else from them. So you ring back, and then you have to repeat it all again. And then by meantime, with all of that, you see a solicitor. You've got to repeat it all again.
Yeah.
It's just like one thing after another, and it's like. They make it a million times worse than it has to be.
Yeah.
It's never going to be easy,
hard.
Sam.
No.
It's not. No. It's not an easy process to go through. It's never going to be, perfect. But it could be a damn sight better than what it is. Yeah, a damn sight better.
Definitely.
There is like simple things that they can put in play. I still keep saying tag an app. Where they tag perps, and it's as simple as that. Tag them. Yeah. If they breach their order, an alarm goes off. That's it, simple. Yeah. Find them guilty, lock them up.
Yeah.
Save money on resources, save money on re-traumatising victims and having to prove or keep repeating what's happened. It's as simple as.
But the focus is never on the survivor there, is it? And there's never any accountability for the perpetrator either, so that's where they're going wrong. And like you said, nothing's kind of fitting together. And just by fitting everything together, it would make a whole massive difference.
I'll tell you another thing I think with officers. They think, it's just another domestic. They can't be arsed with paperwork.
God.
That's what it is. They can't be arsed with paperwork. She'll just go back. She'll go back anyway. She bloody goes back because she's got nothing else to look forward for. That's shit. They wonder why they go back. Oh my God, they are treated worse than what they were living with, and they're in more danger for speaking out. So who is the one that's responsible for domestic homicide? You, because you're there to actually support victims that want to speak out, or them for putting you in a situation where you're more vulnerable than what you were anyway?
Exactly. It's just madness. It's crazy, and hopefully we'll see that change. But I think it'll be a long and slow process before we do get to that point.
Yeah. Do you know what, Sam? It's been lovely speaking to you.
Thank you so
And
much. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
yeah, me too. I love hearing, you know, different stories and meeting different people, and this is the only way that we are going to get this out there, and I think it's really
Absolutely.
important. And we'll have to keep in touch.
Definitely
Fab.
will. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you for your time, Sam. Bye.
Bye.